The posh Raleigh eatery had a festive celebratory vibe going on. The crystal wine glasses sparkle in the soft light of the golden lights that illuminate the tables covered in linen. Up until they stopped, the room was filled with laughter and the sound of glasses being clinked. In the midst of the audience, my husband Michael Harper rose to his feet, raised his wine glass, and a self-assured grin spread across his face. Indulging in our son Nathan's master's degree in business administration brought us all together in this celebration, a moment of pride, an important turn point. Unfortunately, Michael's subsequent remarks broke that happiness like a hammer breaking glass. I've made the decision to begin a fresh chapter in my life, apart from Eleanor. At that moment, the room became silent. At 52 years old, Eleanor Harper had spent 25 years creating this family, and 40 pairs of eyes were fixed on me. While he sat down next to me, Nathan seemed to freeze in his chair. As a reminder of all his hard work, his verdant graduation ribbon dangled from his shoulders. Irritable now. From behind the scenes, I could make out Michael's mistress and interior designer, Lauren Mitchell. There was an obvious betrayal in her presence. Uncomfortably, my so-called pals, who were aware of the affair, moved in their chairs. Just last week, we were giggling over small conversation over coffee. Con artists, no one dared to think I might crack, to weep, to storm out in a theatrical huff. In its place, I grinned, a serene, purposeful grin. Speaking steadily, my voice cut through the stillness like a dagger as I congratulated Michael on his choice. Gently setting it down next to his plate, I retrieved a clean white envelope from my handbag. His arrogant face began to contort. "Then what is this?" With a hint of nervousness in his voice, he inquired, "Something for you to read later?" I added, maintaining a steady and refined tone. Nathan, who was wearing a graduation cap, had a pallid face as I looked at him. His face was kissed by me as I drew near. "Sweetheart, I am so proud of you." I rose up, straightened my clothing, and spoke to the shocked onlookers, saying, "This day is still yours." They were shocked. "I hope you savor your dinner." Feeling the weight of their attention on my back, I stepped out my heels, tapping on the polished hardwood floor, wishing you all a wonderful evening. Angry mutterings trailed behind me as the heavy glass door slammed shut. I stood outside on a hot July night in Raleigh, where the air was thick and muggy and stuck to my skin. However, I was able to breathe normally again after a long absence. Just as I was about to make my way back, the door swung open. After me, Michael's agitated, high-pitched voice yelled out, "Eleanor, what the fuck is going on? Tell me what you've done." A little grin tugged at my lips as I continued walking. I had spent months formulating a strategy to capitalize on his treachery, and it all started with that package. You know, math has always been my strong suit. Through my 25 years of experience in the field, I have honed my ability to detect patterns and unearth hidden truths within large amounts of data. Michael, he had left a data trail that was easy enough for a beginner to follow. You know, math has always been my strong suit. Through my 25 years of experience in the field, I have honed my ability to detect patterns and unearth hidden truths within large amounts of data. Michael, he had left a data trail that was easy enough for a beginner to follow. I ensured our family's financial stability while he pursued his lofty ambitions, 2 doomed software firms, a midlife crisis that drove him to find himself. Through Asheville yoga retreats, I was the breadwinner. When he invested our life savings in a friend's cryptocurrency scheme, a business that failed in a year or less, I was in charge of the finances. Although Michael followed his passion for artisanal coffee roasters, I toiled away at my firm's spreadsheets late into the night to pay Nathan's tuition. His enthusiasm lasted precisely 4 months until he became disinterested. Starting a risk analysis business for women, which was my personal goal, was constantly put on the back burner. Upon Nathan's graduation, I would assure myself, soon after Michael achieves a sense of security. Finding steadiness with Michael, though, was like attempting to follow a desert mirage. Always evading capture, it glistened. Something seemed wrong with our joint accounts around 3 months ago. Typical expenditure is not supported by these little transactions. Miami aircraft ticket, $800. A 2-night stay at a 5-star South Beach hotel can set you back $200. I paid $3,500 for a diamond bracelet, but I have yet to get it. I initially assumed it was a technical issue, possibly due to a mistake made by the bank. However, warning signs are not something I disregard. After all, I've made a living seeing potential dangers. So like a puzzle solver, I began to dig stealthily and slowly. In the middle of the night, with the only sound being the air conditioner's hum, I went online to access our bank login. Using our credit card bills as a reference, I tracked down the purchases. My worst fears were realized by what I discovered. It had been more than a year since Michael had begun funneling funds into an offshore account. He had treated Lauren to expensive Durham restaurants, purchased her a diamond jewelry, and even placed $50,000 down on a non-refundable property near Wilmington's seaside, while insisting that we cut back in order to save enough for retirement. He had declared in a strained voice, "We can't afford that new dishwasher right now, Eleanor," only 2 weeks prior. As he sent money to his mistress, I had nodded, believing him. Up next, I uncovered the messages. As if nothing were wrong with him, Michael once forgot to lock his iPad and left it on the kitchen counter. I was only cleaning the counter to prepare breakfast when the notice drew my attention, not because I was spying. Lauren sent me a text. "So excited for our new life together, darling," she said, and my stomach sank. My shaking fingertips tapped the screen as I skimmed over their chat. Messages on their objectives. Speaking of his impending finally be free, he chose to break the news of our breakup at Nathan's graduation celebration, assuming I would keep my cool under pressure. "She'll be too ashamed to respond," he had recorded. "Okay," Lauren said in response, as I stood there in the early light coming through the window, surrounded by the aroma of coffee. I felt as if the floor had disappeared from under me. "Then we can begin anew." For 25 years, Nathan and I dreamed big spoke late into the night and held each other through his childhood fevers. But my marriage was a lie. Still, I refrained from sobbing. At that time, no. I sent screenshots and copies of the messages to myself via email. After that, I restored the iPad to its original state on the counter and cleared its cache. A little while later, Michael walked downstairs, unaware, whistling. He said, "Good morning, honey," as he planted a kiss on my cheek. I put on an act of friendliness. "Good morning?" Michael had no idea. He never grasped that I am an expert at tracing information. I tracked all of the financial dealings, including the wire transfers and credit card charges. Every detail of his treachery that I documented hurt like a knife to my soul. However, I continued beyond that. Mark, an amiable private investigator who specialized in adultery cases, was retained by me. What I had suspected was validated by him. Michael and Lauren strolling hand in hand down the boardwalk in Wilmington, captured in these photographs. Theme park receipts from a Charleston weekend retreat. even down to the Raleigh apartment lease, which was signed by both of them. In a low-key downtown coffee shop, Mark quietly gave me the file. "Mrs. Harper, I apologize." With firm hands, I slipped the file into my backpack and bowed in gratitude. I knew this wouldn't be a simple task. It wasn't like I was crumbling as I started constructing my case. I went back to the prenuptial agreement we had signed 25 years ago, when Michael was really frightened that I would take half of his future earnings. He was very nervous about this, having just inherited a modest amount from his father. Because of my love and faith for him, I had signed it without thinking twice. His downfall would be hastened by the paper. A loyalty provision which threatened substantial financial penalties for an extramarital affair was buried in the small print. As the sun sets and the blue light from my laptop illuminates our bedroom, I read it cover to cover in the wee hours of the morning. Unaware that I was plotting his demise, Michael slept soundly next to me, snoring lightly. The provision was impenetrable. My lawyer, James Carter, was my go-to guy the following morning. "It's ironclad," James said, while sipping coffee at a cafe situated close to his office. "It seems like you have the evidence to show the affair which might lead to his downfall. His portion of your joint interests the property and retirement funds." As I sipped my cappuccino and nodded, an unusual serenity washed over me. "Good," I murmured. "Shall we proceed?" While Michael plotted his spectacular departure, I quietly prepared for what was to come. Every covert transaction and potentially damning message was meticulously recorded by me. James and I had a second meeting at the ideal time to submit the divorce papers. Michael, I knew, would hold off on making his news until after Nathan's graduation, so as not to spoil Nathan's special day. I had filed the documents that morning before his scheduled address at the restaurant, but he had no idea. Although he did not have access to them just yet, they were securely stored in the court records and will be served at the appropriate time. No matter what, I was always a step ahead. Michael believed his statement had caught me off guard, but I had been waiting for this moment for far longer than he could have imagined. Back when we were a team or so, I believed we bought this lovely Victorian in Raleigh's historic Oakwood neighborhood 15 years ago, and I drove to our house. Michael had already offered Lauren the home in those texts on his iPad, and he had no idea I had seen them. The driveway was greeted with the customary creak of the front gate as I walked out, and I parked my car there. From the inside, it seemed as before. After a pipe burst in 2009, we refinished the hardwood flooring jointly. Images of Nathan's early life, including his first bike ride middle school, science fair victory, and high school graduation, are displayed in frames throughout the corridor. Michael and I used to spend many a late night in this living room leather recliner, fantasizing about our future together. We saw us traveling the world when Nathan went off to college and spending our golden years there. But now things were different. It seemed as if the home had been emptied, leaving just a shell of its former self. With Michael's cologne's subtle aroma hanging in the air, I made my way upstairs to our bedroom. My fingertips caressed the row of gowns that I had worn to innumerable corporate gatherings, bolstering Michael's startup pitches as I unlocked the wardrobe. His bags were concealed in the corner behind them. Everything is already assembled. We'll be all set to go tomorrow, following his major announcement. My mouth dropped open in a bitter chuckle as I fixed my gaze on them. He had always taken great care in his appearance, matching his pocket squares and ties and ironing his shirts to perfection. But he was irresponsible when it involved the important things. absolutely careless, lacking sight. The phone in my handbag was constantly beeping with texts from all over friends at the restaurant, Nathan, and even Michael's sister Sarah, who had traveled in from Atlanta to attend the graduation. As my pulse raced in response to Nathan's message, I withdrew it. "Are you all right, Mom? Are you not here?" My fingers remained steady as I responded back, despite the fury raging inside of me. "I'm doing okay. Take it easy on yourself. Have a great day. You are deeply beloved by me." For months I had kept Nathan in the dark so as not to spoil his last semester. Michael was providing financial support to Lauren while he worked tirelessly to pay for his textbooks. Through late-night study sessions and a part-time job, I was afraid Nathan would be mad that I hadn't told him, but I had faith that he'd figure it out in due time. The combination of his father's charisma and my analytical intellect helped him win awards at his program, but he also inherited my talent for cutting through the clutter. I refused to allow Michael's treachery to tarnish that accomplishment. I am not ready just yet. Perched on the foot of our bed, I felt the gentle touch of the quilt my mom had sewn for our wedding day. Michael would often surprise me with breakfast in bed on Sundays, and I'd go back to our early years as a married couple when we danced to old jazz records in the kitchen and laughed at ourselves as we stomped on each other's toes. Together we had endured so much. We lost everything in 2 doomed ventures. During the challenging toddler years of Nathan, when he suffered from colic and would scream for hours, Michael would soothe him by walking him around the house while singing quietly until he went to sleep. We had comforted each other through the pain of a miscarriage that occurred before Nathan was born. The loss had shattered us both. How had Michael transformed? Had I been blinded by my love for him to his true character, this egotistical, dishonest man from the start? To dispel the recollections, I shook my head. Presently, they were irrelevant. The strategy I had put into action was what was important. I had left more than simply a piece of paper in the envelope that Michael had placed on his plate. It held the secret to both my liberation and his demise. I got to my feet, squared my back, and made my way downstairs, prepared for whatever was ahead. I got to my feet, squared my back, and made my way downstairs, prepared for whatever was ahead. I could hear Michael's vehicle squeaking into the driveway 3 hours later, its tires rubbing against the gravel. With enough power to rock the glass, the front door banged open. "Hey, Eleanor!" His raging wrath resounded throughout the house as he yelled out, "May you please tell me where I may find you?" Relaxedly perusing financial data on my laptop, I sat on the edge of the leather recliner in the living room. With a reddening of his cheeks and the crumpled envelope I had given him in his palm, he barged in, and I softly clicked it shut. "I don't understand. What does this mean?" With a weapon-like brandishing of the papers he demanded. "Just today of all days, you served me with the divorce papers." His voice wavered between rage and shock. Standing tall and unwavering, I met his gaze. "It seemed to fit in well with your plans," I remarked in a level, somewhat conversational tone. "The desire for a fresh start was strong in you. Helping you get there is all I'm doing." His voice was rising as he began to say, "You had no right," but I abruptly silenced him. The situation was perfectly legal for me. Similarly, your choice of Lauren was entirely justified. "We all make choices, Michael," he said, as the steady hum of his phone in his pocket briefly lifted the tension. I recognized him from the moment he gave it a cursory look, before ignoring it. Lauren perhaps wondering why he wasn't in the shared apartment they had rented, the one he had promised her as part of their new life. He attempted a fresh approach, adopting a tone that was arrogant and condescending. Crossing his arms, he continued, "The prenup expired years ago. A lawyer will tell you that," I thought to myself, and I cracked a little smile, the type that made him doubt himself. Actually, that's not true. The fidelity provision will be in full force and effect during the marriage, as stated in Section 12. That ought to have been clarified to you by your attorney. Oh no, you didn't seek advice from one, did you? As he came to terms with the situation, the smugness and color faded from his face. Everything he had, including the Oakwood House retirement funds, and his portion of our joint interests, would suddenly be at risk due to the prenup he had insisted on for his own protection. The most costly error he had ever made had just become his big gesture at the restaurant. He cried out in a broken voice, "You can't do this to me," before collapsing into the couch and giving up the struggle. We created this existence side by side. I cocked my head, observing him closely. Yet you decided to cut it short, though this time it was more insistent and louder than before. His phone continued to vibrate. His shoulders drooped even further as he scowled at it. "What give?" With a trace of laughter threaded into my voice, I questioned. "Lauren's already at the apartment," he said practically to himself on the phone. When you said she's moved her things, an unknowing grin spread across my face. "That flat you registered in your names and your husband's, that lease you put your name on last month." He nodded, but he was still confused and hadn't noticed the trap I had prepared. My tone was deceitfully casual when I suggested that you contact the leasing office. Credit concerns were identified with that application, left unfinished, in order to confirm the representative dialed our home number. He said I dealt with it myself. His wide eyes revealed a mixture of fear and disbelief. He loosened his jaw and parted his lips, but nothing came out. Up on my feet, I retrieved my wallet and a little overnight bag that I had prepared earlier. "The deadline for you to remove your belongings is tomorrow evening," I stated firmly. "Then we'll change the locks." Michael followed me to the door, his voice filled with desperation and imploring. "Where does Nathan stand? Is he going to feel any impact from this?" My composure crumbled as I froze my palm, resting on the doorknob, my rage bubbling to the surface. "You have no right to defend our kid with our son Michael." I left the door slamming shut as I went, and Michael was left to deal with the fallout of his well-plotted seaside life with Lauren. He hadn't considered him at the time. Sarah was a psychology professor at UNC, so I took a drive across town to visit her at her home. With just the gentle illumination of Raleigh's streetlights to break the silence, we drove through summertime air thick with the aroma of magnolias. When I arrived at the door, Sarah embraced me tightly, her arms around me as if they were a lifeline. She drew me inside and said, "I just heard from Nathan." Her voice was heavy with worry. "Are you all right?" As the strain in my shoulders began to subside, I exhaled deeply. I said, "Better than I expected," as I accompanied her to the kitchen. 2 glasses stood by the open bottle of Pinot Grigio on the counter. "I never imagined Michael would cause such a stir," Sarah remarked as she steadily poured the wine, her ire visible in her angry eyes. At Nathan's graduation celebration in front of all the guests, she brought me a glass, and I accepted it with a shiver down my spine. "It was meant to humiliate me," I said, sipping the cold wine in stark contrast to the sweltering evening. Because it was a public rejection, I felt I couldn't respond rationally. Sarah said, her jaw clenching and her lips drawing a thin line. It was always my brother's favorite place to be. With the windows open to allow in the evening breeze, we moved into her sunroom, which was adorned with books and potted ferns. However, this was beyond my wildest dreams. Sarah had always valued her autonomy and professional success. Therefore, she had never tied the knot. The independence to live her life as she saw fit was something I had admired in her for a long time. Why was he so agitated about that envelope? She inquired, her inquisitiveness piercing through the silence. Keeping my grip steady, I poured myself another glass of wine and placed it down. The reason for the divorce, I explained. There is proof of his financial dishonesty. With her mouth hanging open in a bitter chuckle, Sarah pointed out the most crucial part, the prenup that would leave him with far less than he had anticipated. So the prenup, I recall, the moment he was adamant about it. He was extremely cautious about safeguarding the starting capital that his father had recently given him. Oh, the irony, it's so beautiful. In the middle of complete silence, my phone rang. The name Nathan appeared briefly on the screen. In order to collect myself before responding, I inhaled deeply. "Mom," he whispered with an effort. I attempted to object. "I'm going to Aunt Sarah's, so he wouldn't be dragged into this mess." I started to say something, but he abruptly stopped me. His voice hard. "I am already en route. You've been plotting this for months, and Dad is telling everyone that you've gone insane." Overwhelmed by a wave of weariness, I closed my eyes and listened to his horrible words. He had to have been. Every time Michael would change the story so that he would be the victim. "Allow him to speak," I said, maintaining a composed yet resolute accent. "The truth will be revealed in due course." Nathan showed up 20 minutes later, wearing his graduation suit, but with his tie undone and his eyes red from sobbing. Like a child after a nightmare, he stumbled into my arms, his big shoulders trembling. "Why kept this secret from me?" he asked, his voice muted by my shoulder, a blend of pain and rage. I remarked. Because I felt terrible for him, I retreated and ran my fingers through his hair. "I was afraid I might derail your final semester," I whispered. "Your efforts have finally paid off." He took a step back, wiped his eyes with the back of his palm, and clenched his teeth. "Anyway, Dad ruined it anyway." As a last-ditch effort to bring some order to our otherwise chaotic day, the three of us adjourned to Sarah's living room, where we settled into her plush gray sofa and sat among a platter of cheese and crackers, resting on the coffee table. Upon discovering the affair and the financial dishonesty, I informed Nathan about it all. I also shared details about Michael and Lauren's preparations for their new life. I presented him with the private investigator's images, screenshots, and bank statements. Nathan listened with his hands clenched into fists and a stern expression on his face. I sensed something was amiss with Dad. He said, his voice down to just below a whisper. "He's been preoccupied for months, constantly checking his phone and secretly disappearing for so-called meetings. But I never expected this." Sarah gently reached out and squeezed his hand, speaking in a soothing tone. "No one wants to see these qualities in the people they care about." My attorney James texted me as my phone chimed once more. Approval of the emergency filing was granted. In anticipation of the divorce, the accounts that I had marked as suspect were put on hold. Michael could no longer afford the Wilmington condo he had promised Lauren. His access to finances was severely constrained, leaving him unable to cover even the most essential of costs. I proudly handed the letter to Nathan and Sarah, feeling a subtle wave of relief wash over me. "Good," Nathan declared, his voice commanding, and his eyes burning with an untamed aggressiveness that had never been witnessed from him before. He is deserving of it. Good, Nathan said with an angst I'd never seen from him, before a strong voice and fiery eyes filled with protective rage. I was touched by my son's unwavering devotion, but I wasn't naive. I knew he deserved it. I pointed out to him in a calm but firm voice that he is still his father. Your connection to him, it's unrelated to our relationship, Nathan said, his mouth clenched. Eventually, maybe. But I am unable to even look at him at this moment. In Sarah's living room, the oppressive quiet was broken by the sound of the doorbell. Earlier, he had embraced me and shown his pride, but later on, he had plans to blow apart our family. Standing up, Sarah went to respond to it, her face betraying her distress. Shortly after she came back, her voice barely audible. "Michael, it is I." As Sarah escorted Michael and Lauren into the room, I steeled myself, running my fingers over my skirt, since he isn't the only one. While her auburn hair fluttered in the light and her eyes darted about the room, Lauren appeared unsettled as she shifted her weight from foot to foot. She was 35 years old, elegant, and composed, the type of lady who had never known true adversity. On the other hand, Michael was a hurricane of wrath. His face turned red, and he tightened his hands in an angry display of his previous despair. "Eleanor, this madness must end," he yelled out. "Reopen the bank accounts." Nathan got to his feet, stepped slightly in front of me, and tensed his body so that we could have an adult conversation. "Perhaps you ought to have matured a bit before taking the public plunge and telling everyone you were ditching Mom." Michael said, his eyes widening as if he had just noticed our son. "Listen, Nathan, you have no bearing on this. Involves me not at all." Echoing with mounting incredulousness, Nathan reiterated the words, "You bombed my graduation ceremony and our family, and I have nothing to do with it." Lauren cautiously reached out and touched Michael's arm. "Michael, perhaps we ought to depart." With a swift motion, he brushed her aside. "Oh no." With an icy expression on her face, Sarah folded her arms and threatened to stay until Eleanor agreed to be reasonable. Out of everyone here, my sister-in-law appears to be the most level-headed. "You're the one who created this mess, Michael," I said, my voice barely audible as I sat quietly and watched the drama develop. I had played the role of peacemaker and dispute resolver for a long time. It was draining to play that part. I'd finally moved on. I spoke in a steady, collected tone and explained that the funds would not be accessible until the preliminary hearing. 3 days from now, that is. The asset partition will be decided by the judge then. Michael muttered, his cheeks becoming even redder. Just 3 days. For the next 3 days, what am I to do? My tone was almost scientific as I cocked my head. "You have access to your own account, that one into which you have been pouring funds for the last 12 months. Lauren narrowed her eyes and jerked her head toward Michael as if that weren't enough. "What, you don't have another account? How many were there?" The accusatory and incisive question lingered in the atmosphere. It was obvious that Michael had also been dishonest with Lauren. His attention remained fixed on me while he disregarded her. "This is vengeful, Eleanor." I stared into his eyes without flinching. "This was just not you. You might not have ever known me, actually. The same way that I clearly never got to know you." Nathan lowered his voice to a menacing level as he turned to Lauren. Was it on the horizon that he would make such an announcement at my graduation party? Lauren's expression turned red as she lowered her gaze to the ground. As far as I was concerned, he was going to have a private conversation with your mom. The news today, it caught me off guard as well." Michael gave her a betrayed expression, and the rift between them became wider. Sarah spoke confidently. "I think you both should leave." She didn't give anyone any space to argue. "You've offended Nathan enough to last a day," Michael pleaded with a softer, almost frantic tone. "You do realize, Nathan, that relationships evolve. Sometimes people just grow apart," Nathan said with a new level of frigid rage in his eyes. "I get it. You're a coward for not even being able to have a quiet talk with Mom. The only thing I get is that you stole from our family. When I was working 2 jobs to pay for my textbooks, you said that money was tight," and Michael became pale as he froze his jaw, moving back and forth but saying nothing. "That's not how it was," he eventually managed to say, his voice hoarse. "That's precisely how it was," Nathan retorted angrily. "Dad, I beg you to go. With those words, I can't look at you right now." Nathan broke the awkward quiet that had been building up. With Lauren bowing her head in trail, Michael finally turned to depart. His voice was low as he hesitated at the door, turning to face me again. "Eleanor, this is far from done." My stare met his unwavering and firm. "I will challenge you on this. I invite you to give it a go." With his hands shaking and tears falling from his eyes, Nathan fell down on the sofa next to me after they departed. His voice quivered as he said, "I've never spoken to Dad like that." I embraced him tightly, drawing him near while my heart ached for the burden he bore. "Standing up for what's right can be painful at times," I said as I ran my fingers through his long locks. Sarah moved slowly and deliberately as she brought us new glasses of wine. With a subtle grin on her lips, she raised her glass and whispered, "To new beginnings." As a silent promise, the small clink of glass prompted me to raise my hand in reply. This was really only the beginning of a brand new chapter. On a wet Tuesday morning, the Wake County courtroom hosted the preliminary hearing. Michael brought a young attorney from a business that specialized in corporate law, not family law, but I brought my attorney James with me. Another blunder in his hastily devised scheme. With her glasses resting on the bridge of her nose, the judge, a severe lady with piercing eyes and an uncompromising attitude, carefully examined the prenuptial agreement. "This document seems to be in order," she stated with a sharp, exacting tone. "Do you disagree with its veracity?" A young guy in an uncomfortable suit, who appeared anxious, cleared his throat as Michael's lawyer spoke. "Your Honor, we believe the agreement has expired due to the length of time that has passed." The judge read aloud from the paper as she adjusted her spectacles. "As stated in Section 18, the length is for the duration of the marriage and any legal processes that may arise as a result of its dissolution." Michael moved forward and whispered hurriedly to his lawyer, who appeared more and more uneasy as perspiration beaded on his brow. There was no mention of an expiration date. Without faltering in her tone, the judge continued, "The evidence of systematic fund transfers violates the financial disclosure requirements in Section 23. She looked up from the documents as she shuffled through them, her eyes scanning the pages. "In the absence of complete financial disclosure, I am ordering the continuation of the freeze on joint accounts. Mr. Harper will still have access to his personal account. According to the adultery provision in the prenup, Mrs. Harper will continue to have possession of the family home during the proceedings." Hands clenching the table edge, Michael's cheeks flushed a deep pink. He murmured, "This is outrageous," at a volume that I could pick up from across the courtroom. A harsh expression crossed the judge's face as her voice echoed around the chamber. "Mr. Harper, before you sign anything, read the agreement thoroughly. After discovery is finished, the court will meet again in 30 days for the whole hearing." Michael walked quickly and spoke urgently with me as we left the courthouse. "Excuse me, Eleanor, we should approach this discussion with logic." I paused, turned to face him, and maintained an attitude of calm determination. After all, we've been together for 25 years. It had immense significance. I left him standing alone in the courtroom hallway as the consequences of his decisions began to hit home. Rumors and conjecture flew like wildfire across our social circle as soon as it got out. Every day, friends would call, some to provide encouragement, and others to get information regarding upcoming dinner parties. My comments were concise, and I maintained a steady voice. "Michael and I have decided to part ways." While everything was going on, Michael's carefully constructed persona, that of a successful entrepreneur and a loving family man, fell apart. He was unable to fulfill his commitments to Lauren due to the financial restrictions. We lost the deposit on the Wilmington condo transaction because it fell through. The dealership notified him of the repossession and canceled the Tesla on which he had paid a deposit. Sarah contacted me 2 weeks following the hearing to fill me up on the latest developments. Her voice had a hint of humor throughout. "Did you hear?" With an eyebrow lifted, I placed my coffee cup on the kitchen counter and noted that Lauren had left. "Have you already?" Sarah said with a mischievous chuckle. Apparently she found out Michael's startup isn't doing as well as he claimed. While the revelation didn't stun her, the quickness was impressive. There are no such things as the substantial savings he spoke about. She informed her friend Emily, "I didn't sign up to date a man with financial problems." The line, "He always was good at creating illusions," made me giggle, and I shook my head in agreement. I constructed while Michael was adrift. I had a degree of independence that Michael had no idea about, since I had kept my money in different accounts which protected it. A tiny contemporary office with floor-to-ceiling windows and views of the enormous tech complex was rented by me at Research Triangle Park. Harper Analytics is a risk analysis organization that I founded with the goal of empowering women financially throughout life changes. 2 ladies going through divorces were my first clients. Hearing their experiences mirrored mine in ways that were both painful and reassuring. Rapid word-of-mouth advertising increased the number of customers that came to my door. I was an expert at assisting women through difficult financial times, such as those caused by divorce, widowhood, or career upheavals. And I did it with the same level of accuracy that had helped me decipher Michael's treachery. From the ashes of my past, I was able to construct something significant, and each success story brought me a sense of fulfillment that my corporate position had never provided. Nathan, who had accepted a marketing position in Charlotte, would frequently contact me by phone, his voice brimming with joy. When he spoke to his mother over the phone one night, his voice cracked, but he was so proud of her. As I relaxed in my office chair and watched the Raleigh skyline become orange at dusk, I thought, "You're helping people through their worst moments." That made me smile. Just doing what I wish someone had done for me sooner is all I'm trying to explain, I said, preparing women for whatever comes next. Having my skills and knowledge put to use outside my caregiving role was like discovering a whole new side of myself. Our final divorce hearing was on the same day as our 26th anniversary, a day that brought back fond memories of romantic dinners and secret vows. A chapter that had endured for more than 20 years was now coming to a close. Michael appeared weary upon his arrival in the courts. His suit was crumpled, and his eyes were darkened with weariness. His investors pulled out when they heard about the divorce, and his business completely crashed without my financial counsel. I learnt this later on. Photos of Lauren's boat cruises and fancy purses flooded her social media, but she had long since gone. She was now dating a tech millionaire from Durham. Dinner invites and golf excursions were subtly dwindling as most of our mutual acquaintances gradually distanced themselves from Michael as the entire story out. Judgment was speedy and definitive, upholding the prenup in its entirety. After Michael paid his attorney, he departed with his personal possessions, his failing business and the funds in his private account, which were barely sufficient to cover a small apartment in an unsavory area of Raleigh. As the prenuptial agreement predicted in the event of adultery, I was to keep our Oakwood house, my retirement funds, and 70% of our shared assets. A sense of lyrical victory resounded across the courtroom as the justice delivered his ruling. What had been Michael's shield had turned out to be his Achilles' heel. Michael walked cautiously and spoke softly as he approached me for the final time as we exited the courthouse. I made a terrible error. He confessed his gaze, fixating on mine, as if to find some sign of reconciliation, perhaps even a hint of the affection we had previously had. A door softly clicked shut as I abruptly ended his sentence, my tone mild but forceful. "Oh no. That door is closed." He nodded, his shoulders sagging, and his eyes reflecting a sense of resignation and acceptance. As for his comprehension, he remained silent. I actually thought he did it for a change. "Eleanor, my wish is that you discover joy in life." Amid the chaos of our history, he finally spoke to me honestly for the first time in years, and I took it as a little gesture of forgiveness that you deserve it. The little nod I offered him accompanied my turn and departure from the courthouse, the sound of my shoes reverberating across the marble corridor. Harper Analytics was a shining example of success for women in Raleigh and beyond. After 6 months, I was able to take use of my new bigger office's natural light-exposed brick walls and balcony while I sipped my morning coffee and watched the city awaken. I brought on 2 female partners who were equally devoted to empowering women financially, and we formed a community together. My customers were a constant reminder of why I began this path. They varied from young widows to seasoned professionals beginning anew after betrayal. Even though Nathan's marketing work in Charlotte kept him somewhat busy, he still managed to drop by frequently, and he would often bring takeout from our favorite downtown Thai restaurant. The most ironic thing is, as we basked in the glow of the city lights from my balcony one night, he spoke these words. I nodded, enjoying a drink of my iced tea as the summer air caressed my skin, while thinking about how if Dad had simply been forthright from the beginning, he could have retained half of everything. Sometimes people just want what they want right now, I said in a quiet, contemplative tone. A new identity formed in the fires of betrayal and perseverance had been fashioned by the woman who had formerly identified herself as Michael's wife and Nathan's mother. Expert in analysis, business owner, strong supporter. It wasn't only an escape plan, that package I'd given Michael at the restaurant. It unlocked a door I had no idea existed, and through it I could have entered a world I had never dreamed possible. Justice and innovation were concealed behind it. I had regained something considerably more important by safeguarding my future, I alone. Standing on the balcony, I could see Raleigh's skyline as a blank slate of opportunity, and I felt liberated like I hadn't in years.